Today's a really exciting episode. I cannot tell you how excited I am to talk to this guest that we'll be introducing here in a second. But the other exciting thing about this episode is the location that we're at, which we're going to talk here in a little bit. So welcome to this episode of A Warrior's Voice. Today we are going to be talking with Lieutenant Lexi Axelrod. Lexi, How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
So excited to have you out here. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? Kind of what you wanted to do when you were younger, and I'd love to hear your story.
Okay, so I'm from Chicago originally, and when I was 12, my family moved to Michigan. My dad was in the Air Force ROTC, so I always had the idea of serving was something I wanted to do. And then I was college touring, and I fell in love with Annapolis and everything that they stood for. So went to the Naval Academy.
Wait, time out for a second. So, what were some of the schools you looked at?
We looked at Michigan State, Northwestern. Georgetown.
These are great schools, a lot of fun, sororities, parties, and you chose the Naval Academy?
Yes.
Because that's like 4 years of boot camp, basically, isn't it?
It is, but
what attracted you to that?
Well, one, I really liked that, I didn't know what I wanted to do, what I wanted to study, so, go to school for 4 years and then serve for 5 years was a good setup. And then, because I know it's hard to get, your first job is kind of the toughest, so because you need that experience. I knew I'd get that experience, and then just really the camaraderie that they have at the academy and throughout the services.
So take us through what that was like, because I remember when I was in college, it was like that first week was just an absolute crazy party and extended on for 4 years. I think your experience was a little different than that when you showed up to Annapolis. Talk us through kind of those first couple of weeks and how you got acclimated and got started.
Yeah, so I actually went to the prep school first. So I had an indoc up at Rhode Island. And let's see, it seems like a long time ago now, but I just remember the shock of, only having 5 responses that you can give, and they don't ask any other questions, and standing there against the bulkhead studying your verses to memorize and all the sayings to memorize and the history. And I remember they tried to punish us with PT, but I always enjoyed that part.
Yeah, and you certainly did. Tell them about I understand you were on one of the teams when you were up there, did athletics at Annapolis?
Yep, so I was on track for the first year, and then I was on the triathlon team for the following 3 years. So.
Wow, you're literally exhausting me just hearing about all this stuff. So you go to Annapolis, you're a triathlete at Annapolis, you've got the options of doing anything in the Navy, nice, cushy, easy jobs, and what did you end up choosing?
I chose to go Marine Corps.
The Marine Corps, of course you did, right? And why'd you choose Marine Corps over the other options in the Navy?
At first I was like, definitely couldn't go Marine Corps, it's not for me. They're too motivated, but as time went on at the academy, I realized that the Marines just hold themselves to a higher standard, physically and with work and the mission. So I wanted to be a part of something like that.
Excellent. All right, so we finish up with Annapolis. We get to our kind of senior year. You decide you're doing Marine Corps option, and then kind of take us through what happened from there.
So from there, I took a couple months before going to TBS. At TBS, I found out that I was going to be
What is TBS?
The basic school.
And what is that?
Our 6-month training, officer training.
So it's kind of like boot camp for officers, basically.
Yeah, we just learn kind of basically everything that the Marine Corps has, and all the different types of jobs that it has, and lots of leadership.
And what
traits.
attracted to you? What were you attracted to when you were at TBS to go into your MOS, your job?
So I really enjoyed the time we spent in the field because you're out there. It's very hands-on. You're outside in the wilderness, and so I kind of knew I was thinking about combat arms because I also liked the physical aspect of it, and so I was very excited when I got combat engineer.
Combat engineer, so that's pretty exciting. You get to blow stuff up, and get to get out in the field and work with the infantry and all the other, artillery and tanks and everything. What are so you get out of basic school? What was your first assignment from there?
So my first assignment, I was in Camp Lejeune at 2nd CEB.
Okay. And what were some of the things that you experienced there in Camp Lejeune?
So I was blessed to get a platoon right away after going through our engineer school, and had an awesome gunnery sergeant, staff sergeant that I worked with, and had a full platoon of 40 people, and we got to attach to one of the infantry battalions in Lejeune.
So this is exciting. So we go from deciding we're going to go to college, 4 years in Annapolis, which is not just one of the best educations you can get, it's all around experience. And I mean, something that just stays with you for your rest of your life. You chose to go into the Marine Corps. You go through 6 months of basic school, which I can't imagine was easy.
There's a lot of ups and downs.
But I mean, after going through what you went through at Annapolis, that was probably a cakewalk, I imagine. A lot easier.
Yeah.
I don't want to get
quite
you in
different,
trouble
quite
here or
different.
anything. So now we're on the big show. You're
Yeah.
out there, you're in the fleet, they're actually saluting you, calling you ma'am and everything, and you've got
That
command.
did take a while to get used to.
Yeah.
I thought I would hate it, but
You got somebody that's like 20 years older than you, twice the size of you, and now all of a sudden you're responsible for pretty much everything with those 40 Marines. Is that right?
yes, they definitely, learned a lot with them, and didn't know things could even, I couldn't even picture things happening that happened. But overall, we got a lot of good training done, and they were a really great group of guys.
So we like to really hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. Talk about some of the challenges you experienced early on as you were making that assimilation from going to schools and trainings to now actually being on the stage, so to speak.
So I think we talk, in school we talk a lot about leadership and kind of broad picture terms. But then there is you're still learning a new job, when you're there in the spot, expected to know everything or to be responsible for everything. So, you're still learning even once you've hit the fleet. And so just, balancing, leaning on your past education, and then also then being humble and trusting your, senior enlisted advisors, just finding that balance.
Was there a point at some time where maybe you got through at the end of the day and you're like, this is just too much, I'm like, I can't handle this, or this is really challenging? Can you think of any experiences there at Lejeune that really tested you?
So just one, either it felt like oftentimes it was like our platoon against, the rest of the battalion, or because, we would want to try and plan things, and we'd get so much pushback. And
your responsibility as the lieutenant is to then vouch for your senior enlisted in your platoon and try to get some of those things, right?
Yep. And then we just dealt with a battalion that didn't plan very well. So as an engineer, we have materials that we need to order ahead of time, and trying to order things ahead of time and plan a big defense without having any guidance or any commander's intent about what their defense is going to be. Just trying to play that game.
So how would you handle that? I mean, they obviously have other priorities, other things that are going on. You're just one platoon attached to them. How did you use all that leadership training you worked to vouch for your Marines and accomplish whatever those missions were?
So we just came up with different couple cases, scenarios, and I planned with my platoon sergeant, and together he and I, we would just then present the options and different possibilities, and let the battalion commander know what we could offer him.
Great. So then from Lejeune, where did you end up from there?
So then after Lejeune, I spent 2 years there, and then I went to Parris Island.
Parris Island.
Yep.
Now, for those of you that are watching on video, we picked a place right on the other side of these beautiful shrimp roads. That's Parris Island. So tell us a little bit about this place behind you here, Lexi.
Well, it looks like a summer vacation place, and some could call it a summer camp, but it's where we train young civilians into Marines.
Yeah, so it is definitely a summer camp from hell. It is not the most pleasant place. It's where virtually every Marine either goes to Parris Island or San Diego. Talk me through a little bit about what that transformation process is, because it's pretty rigorous. This is not a walk in the park.
No, it's pretty severe. We're on them from when they wake up at 4 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. And with the drill instructors and the series commanders, we just teach them everything. We kind of break them down a little bit to get them out of their bad habits. And then we're all about unit cohesion and team building, and trying to teach them that, there's something bigger than, themselves in the world, and they're part of a team now.
And what is your responsibility as part of that training environment? What do you do? What's your job? Who reports to you? How's that all work?
So I'm a series commander, so I have about 15 drill instructors that I work with, and we have 3 platoons of recruits each cycle. We have a company commander, so
the drill instructors report to you.
Yep, and then.
So for those of us that went through Parris Island or went through TBS and we're used to sergeant instructors or drill instructors, now all of a sudden, instead of having them put the fear of God in you, they're actually looking to you for guidance and leadership. Is that right?
Yes, and it's more if I tell them that, I'm here as a tool to help them, execute the mission to the best of their ability. And, they get so caught up in what they're doing that oftentimes there's things that, on their family side are taking care of themselves, so I can step in there. And then really I just observe and ensure that safety training is happening safely. Gotcha.
Any stories, anything excited? Because you've only been doing this a couple months now, is that right?
Right. I got here in October, so.
So you've had your first series already?
Yep. I had 1 full cycle, did a partial, and, it's definitely a grind. We had some people try to run away, or you always hear crazy stories like that.
And now you're getting to see it firsthand.
Yes.
Did you have any situations here where either your leadership was challenged or people kind of pushed back on you because maybe you're not as senior as some of the other officers there? Or did you ever feel like you had something where people try to push you a little bit?
So I think it's very different here than even the fleet, because it is, the enlisted were the ones that went to boot camp, so they know how it operates, and they've been drill instructors. They go to 4 months of school. I go to like 2.5 weeks of school. So they definitely have a system of how it goes, and we're not trying to create anything new here because everything's systematic and has to be the same across the board. So just trying to make sure that there's stability within that is kind of been the biggest challenge.
And what I love to hear from you, and I saw this a lot with some of the great Marine leaders that I worked with, you had made the comment that you're there to help them. You're there to fix things for them. You're there to, it's not to sit there and yell at them and tell them you got to do this or you got to do that. It's really this servant leadership model, which I love so much, because I saw that a lot in my entrepreneurial journey, that I believe that the leader is at the bottom, not at the top, and the leader's job is to make sure that you serve everybody else that's underneath you. Is that kind of the leadership principles you have?
Very much what I believe with leadership, and that part is pretty easy here because we spend so much time with the drill instructors that it's very easy to get to know them. And I know there are a lot of people who have a struggle with building their trust, because if the series commander's around, they don't want to get in trouble for something that they're doing. But once you build that rapport, that trust, and the rest is almost fun.
That's a long hours and a lot of hard work, but with your training, I'm sure this is nothing for you. So what's next in the Marine Corps, do you think? How long are you going to be down here for, and what are some of the things you're looking at doing next?
So I have 2 years here, so I'll have about 1.5 years left, and I'm pretty undecided what I want to do next. In the fall, I'll have to decide if I'm going to stay in the Marine Corps or get out. So if I stay in, I want to go to EWS, and then.
And what is that?
So that's basically our knowledge school for captains.
Okay.
So basically Marine Corps school for captains, to make sure that they know everything from senior leadership to tactics to strategic kind of operations.
Gotcha. So Lexi, I know that you and I had talked in the past, being a former Marine warrior, although we're always a Marine once a Marine, right? and somebody that's right now in the thick of stuff, there's a lot of stress out there. How do you deal with all that stress?
So I, on top of being a Marine, I'm a yoga instructor. So, I went to Bali and I did a lot of training there. And on top of just the yoga, took a lot of interest in like mindfulness and we call it breathwork. So I practice that and try to, teach some other Marines that as well.
So let's help our listeners out a little bit here, because as I was doing some research, I found a couple different articles about stress in the military, and the numbers that I heard I think are completely a lot lower, because not a lot of people are going to self-report in the military,
right,
because it can really hamper your upward mobility, your clearances and everything else. But I heard it was somewhere in that 15% range. People in the military suffer from, depression to the point that it could really cause some bad things. It's interesting though. Do you know what the number is in entrepreneurship that identify in that same category? It's over 70%.
Really?
And I think the reason why for entrepreneurs is there is no system, there is no framework. One of the great things about being in the military and on active duty, everything's taken care of. You don't have to worry about housing, you don't have to worry about food, you don't have to worry about health care. Everything is taken care of for you. And more importantly, you got your team of brothers and sisters. You've got other people out there that have been through the shit with you, and so they know what it's like, and you can lean on them, and you can be vulnerable and share stuff that you probably wouldn't share with civilian counterparts. You don't have that in the entrepreneurial world. So one of the things I think that's really important, and one of the reasons that I'm so excited to have you here talking to our guests, is what can you teach those people that are either entrepreneurs, maybe they're transitioning out of the military, maybe they're in the military right now. They're warriors, and as warriors we put on a big tough outer shell, but we know that if you don't have the inside taken care of, the outside doesn't really matter. Talk to us a little bit about some tools and techniques that we can use to get that mindfulness and get that level of Zen, because every time I'm around you, I'm just absolutely admire your grace, and you have an aura around you that just is very calming, and I don't usually get that from a lot of people that are in the Marine Corps.
Yeah, so you bring up a good point that being in the military, we're not going to report, or we're not going to go see medical if we're dealing with an extreme amount of stress, because to us it's just natural, it's part of the job.
And the stress over at this place is probably unlike the stress anywhere else in the Marine Corps.
It's through the roof, because you slam responsibility on top of lack of sleep, and and then for the rest of the Marine Corps, lots of combat, and so I try to find a method. I like to use breath work to help subside all that stress, because it's different than going to the doctor or talking to a therapist. It's something that you can do in either groups. If you're practicing yoga, you can just practice mindfulness on your own. And I think that's really a key factor and why it can help people in the military, especially because, we're very private about how we feel, and we don't, even dive into that, how we feel ourselves very often.
So I'd like to put you on the spot right here.
Yes.
Why don't you take me through, and our listeners through, a couple real simple exercises that we can do to kind of lower some of that stress?
Okay, so the simplest form, and breathwork goes into a lot of simple things, but we can go into that in a minute. But just closing your eyes, and first of all, you're not changing your breath at all. You're just becoming aware of what your breath is doing. Do you have a short, shallow breath, or perhaps you will have a normal, deep breath? And then once you realize where you're at and accept that where you're at, it's totally fine, there's nothing wrong or right, then you begin to slowly slow your breath down, and you'll just inhale for 3 counts and exhale for 5. Good. Breathe in again, and you'll continue to do this breath. After a while, you feel comfortable with the 3 breaths in, 5 counts out, then you can move on to making it 3 counts in and 6 counts out. And as you go through this practice, you can extend the length of each breath. But what you want to focus on is kind of breathing through your throat. So you'll hear a little bit of like almost like a growl, slow growl when you breathe. And you can just have to do this for 5, 6, 8 breaths, and then you can open your eyes and just slowly open them, take in your surroundings around you, and just notice everything that you didn't notice before.
Wow. I certainly feel a difference. That really works. That's awesome.
Yes,
Thank
and
you so much.
What's even cooler is you can spend 3 minutes doing that, right before going into a meeting, or if you just walked out of a stressful situation. But then you can also do like sessions that are 40 minutes to an hour where you find certain breathing patterns, or you work on almost hyperventilating your body, and you kind of then tap into the energetic body. So, quantitative physics, all mass is energy, so we're just a ball of energy, and so once you really get into doing it for an extended period of time, 15 minutes to an hour, you can really almost start to even feel the vibrations of your body.
Wow.
And so just, you're just bunches of little balls of stress, so if you can ease those balls, then...
Man, I could really tell a difference. It's amazing. When I opened my eyes up, everything, the color changed. I definitely felt some of that tension and other stuff go away. So that was so quick. I can't believe the change it made in that short amount of time. Great.
So a big part of it is just being aware, and then like I said, the cool part about breath work is that it can almost even just help your mental stress, but then it can help with a lot of physical ailments as well once you really get to start playing with it.
Gotcha. Well, Lexi, this has been really great. First of all, thank you for what you're doing. I get frustrated when people say thank you for your service, because I think it gets thrown around a little too much. But you're right in the middle of the fight. It's not that thank you for what service you've done. You're actively serving right now. You are inspiring our next generation of warriors to not only be tough physically and mentally, but also have that control over their emotions, which I think has just got to be a real breath of fresh air, if I may, for some of those drill instructors you work with, and certainly the recruits that you're molding into Marines.
Yes, because once you have that control of your emotions, then that makes everything else that much easier.
Yeah, and it is amazing. I look at the people that I respect most as warriors, or like the samurai, or like people that are a lot in the Eastern cultures, because they have such incredible control over what they want to do. Where sometimes you think of the guys that are the big tough football players, they get too emotional, and when you get emotional, you can't think logically, you can't do those type of things. So, and
it goes all the way back to kind of trying to find the root of the problem, and that's looking inside yourself. And when you take the time to breathe, or you go through breath work, then you really start to discover what's inside.
And one last thing before we wrap up here, I know that they've changed a lot from when I was in the Marine Corps versus now. When I was in, we had a system called LINE, Linear Intrafighting Neurological Encounters, and it was basically creating really violent actions to take the will to fight away from our enemy. It sounds like we've really shifted more towards Eastern philosophy and almost martial arts. Can you talk us through a little bit about some of the hand-to-hand training that they're doing right now in the Marine Corps?
Yep, so now we have a program, martial arts program, we call it MCMAP, and there's 5 different belts, and we start them off here at Parris Island. They'll get their tan belt, and so we integrate martial arts. It's a mix of several different types of martial arts, and then we also throw in there then character development with that as well, so balance of the 2 of those.
So a sound mind and a sound body. This is great to hear that we're making that transition into the next generations of Marines, and it's really exciting. Well, Lieutenant Axelrod, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm sure this is going to be really helpful for a lot of people. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you and hear more about the breathing work and the stuff that you do, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Is it Facebook? Is it LinkedIn? Is it email? What's the best way that you would feel comfortable people reaching out to you?
Either Facebook or really email is the best.
Email. And what's a good email for you?
Lexi.Axelrod@gmail.com.
Lexi.Axelrod@gmail.com. Well,
Yes.
thank you so much, Lexi. We wrap up every one of our sessions here with a dedication to a Marine or a warrior that has impacted you. Sometimes they were ones that have fallen in combat. Sometimes they were one that directly work with you. Is there a warrior you'd like to dedicate this show to?
Yes, I would like to dedicate this show to Major Kelsa. She was my mentor back at the Academy and just showed me how to, live a well-balanced life as a Marine.
Excellent. Well, the one final thing that we do is we always finish up with a knife hand and a Semper Fidelis to cancel it off. So I'm going to count down to 3. And when I get to 1, we're going to give them a knife hand and a Semper Fidelis. Ready?
Yes.
3, 2, 1. Semper Fi.